So we're continuing to study Masechet Sanhedrin. It's still Yod Chet Sivan Tafshin Pedale. This is my father's Yom HaZikaron, so the Torah we studied will be Le'ilun Nishmato. This is the day he passed away. We're still just at sunset. Okay, Ben Hashem Mashal. All right, so let's study. Ve'aya b'yom hahu. So you have the place, for those of you who have the book, Ve'aya b'yom hahu. Ve'aya b'yom hahu. Yasul subolo me'al shichnecha. And let me just give you an introduction. So we've been studying a lot about this really, I say a biblical war. Well, it's in the Bible, so it was a biblical war. Okay, so I could say that. But it really is one of the most dramatic wars in the history of the Jewish people. Because in this war, we lost 10 tribes, 10 out of 12 tribes. In this war, we lost almost all of Judea. Meaning, after conquering the 10 tribes in the north, he conquered almost all of the kingdom of Judea, with the exception of the city of Jerusalem. And it was almost all over. Now, so on the one hand, the Gemara devotes a lot of time to this war, because this war is a model for what will save us from future calamities. So why was the city of Jerusalem saved? So we're studying about what was it that saved the city of Jerusalem, right? And this war is also a precursor to the war of Gog and Magog. So a lot of the things that happen in this war are similar to what's going to happen in Gog and Magog, and that also will be a potential calamity, or a calamity that actually takes place but then is stopped. Gog and Magog describes how they actually will enter Jerusalem. In this war, they don't quite make it into Jerusalem. In Gog and Magog, they will actually get to Jerusalem. So, but there are some similarities, and the idea is that by studying this war, by studying the Gemara, you have an inkling as to what's going to happen in the future. So let's continue in the Gemara, and this is during the king Chizkiah, and the prophet was Isaiah, and therefore you see in the prophet Isaiah a lot of verses that deal with this particular war, because he was alive, he was there, he saw the war, right, and he prophesied about the war. So that's Isaiah. So Ve'aya b'yom hahu yasur subolo me'al shichmecha. Says the prophet Isaiah, there will come a day where you will be redeemed from the king of Assyria, from King Sanherib, and his heavy weight will be removed from upon your shoulders. Ve'ulo me'al sabvarecha. And the yoke of Sanherib, because he was taxing the people to death, he was imposing insane taxes upon the people, upon Judea, upon Samaria, and then finally he said, why just take 50% tax when I can just destroy the whole country? And that's what he did. So ve'ulo me'al savarecha, I will remove his yoke from upon your neck. Ve'chubal avel. I want to make sure I'm reading this correctly. 1 minute. The pasuk says, "Vechubal ol." Yeah, because in the Gemara it says there's a vav, but it's not. Vechubal ol mipnei shamen. And what's going to happen is the yoke. I'm translating it literally. The yoke will be destroyed because of oil. That's the literal translation of the word. So what did Isaiah mean when he said that the yoke will be destroyed because of oil? You understand? Again, it's saying that God will remove the yoke of Sanherib from upon the Jewish people, and specifically it's the oil that would lead to the destruction of the yoke of Sanherib. So that's what the Gemara is going to deal with. What does that mean? So the Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha, Chubal ol shel Sanherib b'penei shamno shel Chizkiyahu. The yoke of Sanherib, the king of Assyria, will be smashed, will be destroyed because of the oil of Chizkiah. What oil? Shehaya dolek bevate chenesiyot u'bevate midrashot. The oil was lighting in the synagogues at night, in the Batei Midrash at night. So at night, people were studying Torah, and the same way we have electricity here. The electricity costs money. Back then, in order to produce light at night, you had to get oil. The oil costs money, but he insisted that all the Batei Knesset and all the Batei Midrash will be open at night, and at night is when people study Torah, because during the daytime, what do people do? They work, right? They work. That was always like that. By the way, this whole invention that we have today in Israel, that people don't work, God bless them, no problem, but that's not the Jewish way. That's something new. So always in Jewish tradition, in Jewish history, the daytime was a time for work, and the nighttime was the time for Talmud Torah, and that's why they needed to have the oil in the Batei Midrash and in the Batei Knesset so that people can study Torah at night. Ma'asa. So what did he do? Na'as cherev al petach Batei Midrash. Ve'amar. Kol mi she'eno osek b'Torah yidakel b'cherev. So this Hizkiah HaMelech was very passionate about Talmud Torah, and he stuck a sword at the entrance of the Bet Midrash, and he said, anyone who doesn't study Torah is going to be stabbed with this sword. Meaning, it's hyperbola, of course, hyperbolic, meaning if you want to be a member of my kingdom, if you want to be a citizen of Judea, you must study Torah. I'm not going to tolerate ignoramuses. Today we have a public school system. Everybody has to go to public school, right? Back then, there were no public schools. There was no public education. Public education is a relatively late invention. But Hizkiah HaMelech, he had public education for everyone. Now again, I'm just saying this because sometimes we get a little confused. So we think that this idea, and I'm putting it out there, not to get into politics, but to explain to you how the Torah works. So this idea that there's people who study Torah and do nothing but study Torah, right? So in Israel, you have yeshivot where people study Torah, they refuse to work, they refuse to serve in the army. You work, you'll pay taxes, you'll support me. Your son will go to the army. Great, I don't have to go to the army. I don't have to send my son to the army. That model is anti-Jewish because Hizkiah HaMelech says, Kol mi she'eno osek b'Torah, everybody must study Torah. So this idea that some people study and some people say, so you have a country where some people are studying Torah and other people don't do any Talmud Torah. That's a ridiculous anti-Jewish concept. It actually comes from the Christians in the Middle Ages, that they had monasteries, and in the monasteries you had people who were full-time monks and full-time involved in the religion, and then everybody else was ignoramuses, and they in the monasteries, there were one class of people, and the people, just the simpletons, were another class of people. Eventually there was revolution, and because they were so selfish in Europe, the religious ecclesiastical class, they hoarded huge amounts of wealth for themselves, and finally the people revolted. They said, it's ridiculous. We don't have any food, and you people in the monasteries, you're living the good life. So it came the French Revolution, and that stopped. But the point being that under Hizkiah's model, the model of Judaism is everybody has an obligation to study, right? Okay, so what happened? Later on they did a census, or they wanted to examine what's happening. How did this educational program work? Was it successful? Years later, they didn't find a single ignoramus. Migavak, they went from the south of the country to the north of the country. They went to examine, and they saw the entire public was well educated. People knew, they were intelligent, they understood the Torah. They didn't, even young children. And by the way, and this is the beauty of the Torah, we didn't discriminate against women. We didn't discriminate in not too long ago. Women couldn't even vote in this country, right? Women, they were not educated, that's for sure. So they say that his educational system was so supreme and superior that even little boys and little girls, ish ve'isha, men, women, that didn't know the laws, even the most arcane part of Judaism, which is the laws of Tumah and Tahorah, purity and impurity. Very few people know those laws. They're very difficult laws, and yet they knew that as well. So there was a complete knowledge of all facets of the Torah. It was an incredibly successful educational system. That's what Hizkiah did. So what the Gemara is saying is that the oil of Hizkiah, meaning this educational program that he insisted upon, was the reason that Sanhedrin eventually, his yoke was destroyed. You understand the connection? So going back to the pasuk, it says, "V'hubal ol mipnei shamen," the yoke will be destroyed from the oil, meaning the oppression of Sanhedrin is going to be destroyed because of the oil of Hizkiah. So that's what happened there, and it's a remarkable incident. We know that when the Mashiach comes, there will be a prophecy in the land of Israel, and there will be an intellectual and spiritual reawakening. And the pasuk says, "V'nibeu benechem u'mnotechem." Even little boys and little girls will reach a level of nevuah, which is unfathomable. I mean, a little girl having nevuah, like how does that even? A little boy having nevuah, like how can that possibly be? Like today, none of us reach a level of nevuah, but then it's going to be so. There'll be so much spirituality, so much Torah, that everybody will just be lifted up, and this is going to be the way of Yemot HaMashiach. So similar to what happened in the days of Chizkiah. And it says about that generation something interesting. Again, this is the prophet Isaiah, and I'm repeating what I said before. The reason it's mentioning the prophet Isaiah is because he was alive, and he was recording what took place, but also predicting what's going to take place soon for the contemporary people. And he says as follows: it will come on that day when the Jewish people are redeemed from Sanhedrin. A person will have not a lot of assets. He's going to have a young cow. He'll have 2 sheep, and that'll be enough for him. How can that be enough? That's not a lot. How can you live off a young cow, eglat bakar, u'shteson, and 2 sheep? How's that possible? So Gemara explains. It brings another pasuk. This is a continuation. So let me explain that pasuk. To understand that pasuk, you have to read the next pasuk, which says V'haya merov, and you don't have it in the Gemara, so I'm going to read the pasuk for you. V'haya merov asot chalav yochel him'ah. Yochal him'ah. It's because there's going to be such a beracha that there will be an overabundance of milk produced by those animals. So much so that you won't know what to do with all the milk. You sell it. How much milk can you sell? And you're going to have to make butter from it because you're not going to be able to use all the milk. You'll make dairy products, I don't know, cheeses, whatever you make with the milk, right? So meaning there's going to be a beracha in even a very small amount. You have a little amount of assets, and there's going to be tremendous beracha even in that, right? And the pasuk continues and says, and this is in the Gemara, ביום ההוא יהיה כל מקום אשר יהיה שם 1,000 גפן ב1,000 כסף לשמיר ולשייט יהיה. And it's going to be a situation where you're going to have land which was filled with thorny, bushy plants. You ever go to like a field in Israel which is not cultivated? So that field, you see it's like full of these thorny plants, right? Now what happened is, and let me explain this a little more. During the war, people couldn't cultivate the land. Now, one of the problems on October 7th, post-October 7th, the war, is that many of the farmers had to leave the fields, which were agricultural plots of land in southern Israel, tomatoes, cucumbers, peppers, very, very, very rich agricultural land. Also, they have tremendous technology, the blessing from Hashem as well. And because they had to leave it, now a lot of this land is desolate. Right? So it was very similar. So there was a lot of desolate land that was desolate because of the war. And Isaiah is saying that land that had shamir and shait, meaning thorny bushes, wild, uncultivated land, not because it wasn't good land, but because of the war that prevented the cultivation of the land, right? So what's going to happen is, Yesham 1,000 gefen be1,000 kasef. It's going to be you can have 1,000 vineyards, and this 1,000 vineyards will produce a huge amount of money, 1,000 silver coins. Each vineyard will produce silver. So again, sometimes you have an economy where there's an overabundance, let's say, of assets, but it's very difficult to be prosperous even from the overabundance of assets, right? This idea that you can have a lot and not enjoy it. And comes Isaiah and says, and you can have not that much. You can have a little beautiful house, a small little. I remember when people have little stores, like a mom and pop store. Now you can't even have a mom and pop store anymore. Like you have a mom and pop, they put you out of business. What was it called? Duty's Hardware Store? Been here since 1929. Out of business. Why? So that's a good example. It's a little hard. I mean, it's a hardware store, and they're doing great. They have a great business. Closing down. Why are they closing down? I mean, we know what's happening. We know what's happening in the Western world, how they're trying to destroy small businesses. We get that. But the point is, Isaiah is saying it's going to be a situation, people will have a small amount, 2 sheep, 1 cow, that will be your business. Beautiful. No stock market. What do I buy? When do I sell? How do I buy? This is happening, that's happening. You go crazy, right? Very simple life.
It sounds like it's going back to old school.
Yes, exactly. That's correct, because the old school is you don't need to own. If you're in a society where in order to just survive, you got to do like all these businesses and work like crazy and go nuts and you still can't make it, there's something very wrong in that society. So the old school is you can be middle class and really enjoy, and have enough. What do you need? You're right? Like, what do you need? You're a billionaire. Like, what are you going to do with $1 billion or $2 billion? 10, like how many yachts? I was in, where was it? Oh yeah, I was in Puerto Vallarta a few months ago. And, okay, not my first choice of vacation. My company took me there, whatever. I personally like Los Cabos much more. I don't know, for those of you who've been in Mexico. So Los Cabos is beautiful, highly recommended. But I was in Puerto Vallarta, that was nice. And we saw this yacht, amazing yacht. It was crazy. It was huge. And we found out that it's some guy in Montana who owns a yacht, and he comes here once a year, maybe if he's still alive. I guess, is he still alive? Not alive. But it's like, okay, it's like, what do you have? Are you enjoying it? So once a year you go to, like what is that? Right? Like, what is that? Like, what does it even mean? Right? See how people own houses all over the world, and they're always struggling and working and this and fighting. No. Old school. Our parents were very happy people, right? They worked hard, they had their stores, and they were able to make a living. So that's a healthy society, right? All right. Any questions? Anybody object to that? Anybody saying no? We like the current system. Baruch atah Adonai, Elohim melech haolam shekol hayan v'baro.
When they're going to take over Jerusalem, in today's world, does it have to be an army, like foot soldiers, or could it be by rocket?
Cyber attack.
Or anything other than
So, it seems from the verses that it'll be similar to October 7th, meaning it'll be people entering Jerusalem.
So violent.
Very. Yeah, including the verses.
All the stuff we've seen.
Yeah, like rape. I mean, it actually says so in the verses, which I always thought was like
barbaric.
No, I always thought how can that happen in a modern context? Like, it never made sense to me. So I used to take it some sort of maybe a metaphor. Like, how can that happen? It can't it can't be a situation where we would get to the point where, God forbid, that's happening, and for some reason we're not stopping it. Like, how could that possibly happen?
Anti-Semitism that we've seen since October 7th, we thought was before,
Yeah, exactly. And also
we knew it was there, but we thought it was sort of under the covers.
Yeah, but we never realized the extent.
Right.
My God,
Because
right?
we didn't live it.
Yeah.
We didn't live it.
We didn't live it, exactly. But the point is, after October 7th, I'm like, the verses seem like kind of literal, but I could be wrong.
I hope you're wrong.
I hope I'm wrong. But that's what it said. So,
When was the last time this book was wrong?
no, maybe it's a metaphor. I hope it's a metaphor. I don't want to, these types of things to happen. But God, man, all right. There's a lot of hatred against the Jewish people. We see it. It's pathological. All right. So ve'usaf shelalchem osef echasil kemashak gevim shokek. And then Isaiah says, you are going to you're going to gather the war booty. Not only there's going to be this terrible war, and you're going to be victorious in the war. And not only are you going to be victorious in the war, you're going to be able to gather the war booty like one would gather locust. Okay, what does that mean?
Abundance.
Okay, so first, yes, abundance. Okay, but I'm going to read to you the Gemara, and I'm going to give you my explanation, which kind of was like a habraka, like just a stroke of genius, not genius, of lightning, I meant to say. And I'll tell you where I got it from. I'll explain to you the genesis of the idea, but let's read the Gemara from first. Amar lehem Navi Yisrael, Isfu shel alchem. The prophet tells the Jewish people, I want you to get ready, because there's going to be a point in the war where not only are you going to defeat the army of Sanhedrin, but you're going to be collecting the war booty from his soldiers. When you say collecting the war booty, it's going to be like a limited amount which we have to divide, or it's just going to be so much, or we're just going to go and take. It's going to be like you're collecting locust. That's one the same way you collect locusts. You don't divide it. Everybody goes outside their house and they take the locust. There's going to be such an abundance of war booty. You're just going to go outside the city. You're going to be collecting the war booty that's outside, because they're all going to be dead, right? And they all died, right? That night they all died. So that's what's going to happen. Okay. So I was thinking about this and like, what is this thing with the locust? And then I remembered 30 years ago, I was in a yeshiva in Jerusalem, and it was Rabbi Mordechai Atiyah. So Rabbi Mordechai Atiyah, who I'm talking about, is the grandson of the famous Rabbi Mordechai Atiyah from also from Jerusalem, but he was in Mexico. He used to come to the community, and he has a yeshiva in Jerusalem. He has to go to the yeshiva in Jerusalem. He was very familiar with my father, so my father said, "Why don't you study there?" So it was summertime, so I was studying, and then I went there. I used to go there quite a lot. So this time actually was winter, and it was Perashat Va'era, and then Perashat Bo, and then for Perashat Bo, he said the following. He was giving a class on the Perashat HaShavua, and came the Makat Arbeh. Okay, so he's explaining on Makat Arbeh, and then he said something. I'm like, I remember hearing this. I'm saying, like, what the heck am I ever going to do with this information? Like, it's just whatever. It seemed like not meaningless information, useless information. Okay, but he said it, and it was nice. As a child, I wasn't a child. Okay, as a young adult, I thought it was nice, intriguing, but useless to know. So the information was as follows. The information was that when there was a locust plague, be it in Israel, be it in Saudi Arabia, wherever it is, it's not uncommon every few years to have a locust plague in that part of the world. Now, the locust eats all the vegetation, but the locust itself, A, is kosher, and B, it has a huge concentration of protein. It's a very healthy insect. Most insects have parasites in them. So, for example, they want us to eat insect stew. You know that, right? So one of the problems with the insect stew, other than the fact that it's not kosher and that it's grotesque, is that it has a lot of parasites. They don't know what to do with that. If they ever started feeding insect stew to people, it would be highly damaging from a health perspective because of all the parasites. Okay, for some reason the locusts do not have these parasites. So what did they used to do? How did they used to catch the locusts? So he told me they used to go at night. At night the locusts were sleeping, and they would cover the trees with like a sheet, and then when the locusts would wake up at night, they would all be in the sheet, tied up. They would wake up, sleeping at night, they would wake up the next morning, but they were tied in the sheet, and you already had them in the sheet. They would all fall into the sheet, and that's it. Then you would take them and you would put them in the water or boil it, however you want to make it. That was it. That's how they caught the locusts. So they took advantage of the fact that at nighttime, they would fall asleep, they would cover it, and they would fall into the sheet, and that was that. And I heard this again, it was probably about, you know what? I'm realizing that wasn't even that. It was maybe more than 30 years ago. But okay, be that as it may, it was like in the late 80s. That's when I heard this class. So I always thought like, okay, that's just a nice piece of information. Now I understand what's happening in this Gemara. This Gemara is saying you're going to collect the booty of these people because they're all going to die at night. Like the locusts are sleeping at night, they're going to die at night, and you're going to be able to go and just collect everything in the morning like you're collecting locusts. That's the meaning of the Nebu'ah of Yeshaya. The same way it's really easy to collect locusts, they're sleeping at night, and you just go, and then in the morning you have a huge amount of locusts. Not that I would ever want to eat that, I don't know how bad. Again, like my being a Westerner, I would not want to eat locusts, but apparently it was a delicacy. The Yemenites, by the way, they used to eat locusts. They actually know which locust is kosher, which isn't kosher. They have a masoret, but that's the meaning of this Gemara. You understand the point? So sometimes you hear something in the back of your mind, it stays, And then decades later, oh, I figured it out. Now I see why God had me hear that particular class. So that was that. Let's continue. Man, I keep saying every time I come to the class, I'm like, I prepare like all the way, like, and we never, like, I never finished 10% of what I thought we would do. All right, what time is it now?
Yeah.
All right, we'll go to 9:15. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. All right. So we did about the locust. All right. Okay, let me open up my. All right. So then the people had a question. This is a very interesting she'elah. So you know that before. Okay. So you know that before he got to Jerusalem, this guy Sanhedrin, he conquered all of the 10 tribes of Israel. Now, therefore, when you're taking away the war booty from Sanhedrin, you're really taking away property that used to belong to a Jew beforehand, because a lot of the wealth they had was wealth that they plundered from the 10 lost tribes, right? So those 10 tribes that were in northern Israel, they plundered their wealth. And now when you're going to be taking the wealth of these dead Assyrian soldiers, you're really going to be taking the wealth of Jews, right? So it's me'orabo. So how can you have it? It's a ta'arovet. It's like a mixture of like, kosher food and non-kosher food. Here you have a mixture of property that belongs to the Assyrians, which you could take. Fair and square. All's fair in love and war, I guess. War, certainly. But it's also Jewish property, which is haram to take. Right? So now that's an interesting legal question. Amar lehem. Isaiah answered the following. He says, Kemeshek. Hold on one second. Why am I not following this pasuk? Yeah. Here it is. Kemeshek gevim shokek bo. There will before we explain that Meshek gevim, it's going to be. It's going to be like hills or mounds of locusts that you're going to be gathering. But the word gevim in Hebrew also refers to sources of water. Like when it rains, sometimes the rain forms these pools of water. So it says, Ma gevim halalu, the same way these pools of water, ma'alin et ha'ala mitum'a letahora, have the power to purify a person who's impure. It's like going into a mikveh, right? Af mamonam shel Israel. There was a law that if a Jewish person was conquered by a goy, and now the goy has that property, and now you're saying, how can I do business with that goy? Maybe the property he got is from the Jew. How can anything I try to get could be from a Jew. That's not the law. The law is kevan shenafal biad goyim or biad chavim miyat yeh. It's considered like it became purified because the original Jew that used to own that property realizes he's never going to have it again, and it's called yeush. Yeush means he gave up hope of ever having the property again, and therefore, according to halacha, I don't have to worry about the fact that maybe at one point this Assyrian soldier, this gold necklace that he has, this silver ring that he has, originally belonged to a Jew. It's purified by virtue of the fact that it was in the hands of the goy. And this is similar to what Rav Papa said about the nations of Ammon and Moab. So when the Jewish people wanted to enter Israel, they wanted to pass by Ammon, they wanted to pass by Moab. That's where Jordan is today. And they refused to let them pass into their territory. And God said to the Jewish people, don't touch that land. I promised Ammon, the Ammonites get whatever they get. Moab, I promised Moab, the Moabites get whatever they get. They have their land. Don't touch it. But then, there was an interesting situation. The Golan Heights, in those days, was in the hands of the Amorites, Sichon Melech HaEmori. But originally, it was part of Ammon. Now, if we take God's instructions to us, we're not allowed to take the land of Ammon, then we shouldn't be able to take the Golan Heights. So how do we take the Golan Heights? The original law was you can't touch the land of Ammon, and this is the land of Ammon. But the answer is, since another goy came and took it from Ammon, once the other goy took it from the original owner, that's it. It's kosher, right? So we had a right to go into the Golan Heights and make war against Yahon Melech Chayebori. Actually, he attacked us. We didn't attack him. Doesn't matter. A subject for another class. He attacked us. We took the land. We didn't have to now go back to Ammon and say, "Hey guys, you want your land back?" That's it. It was purified in the hands of Yahon Melech Chayebori. Also here, the property of the Aseret HaShevatim, even to the extent that some of the property you would have taken from the soldiers originally belonged to a Jew, once it went to the Goy, it became purified. That's the end of that. Amar Abuna. Okay, so did I skip anything? No, that was it. Okay. Amar Abuna, continuing to describe the battle. And this really is remarkable. I'm going to explain it to you. We'll continue this in the next class. But he says as follows. This person had, they say Godspeed with you. This person, Sanhedrin, Godspeed. Sometimes a person does really, really well, and he's doing amazing. It's just unbelievable. And he thinks God is with him, and yeah, God was with him. Because God wanted him to be arrogant and to think that he's gonna be amazing, just so he can bring him down at the very end, right? So God's speed was with this Rasha. He in one day, he did 10 different stations or 10 different cities. He was rushing towards Jerusalem. And here's a Pesukim in Isaiah that describes the names of the different cities. Ba al-Ir, Ba al-Ayat. Ayat is one city. He arrived to Ayat. Avar Migron. From there he went to a city called Migron. LeMichmash Yavkid Kalav. He got to a third city called Michmash, and over there he stored some of his weapons. So, because you always need a place to store the weapons. By the way, you heard where Hezbollah is storing their weapons? In the Beirut airport. Now here's the thing. They not only stored their weapons at the Beirut airport, they stored huge amounts, tons of ammonium nitrate. So
that's the one that went off on the pier?
So if Israel, this is more. So if Israel decides to bomb the airport, which naturally they would want to do to destroy the weapons, it would be like an atom bomb over Beirut. I mean, the whole city, there would be nothing left. What? I'm sorry?
And it would look like they attacked an airport.
And it would look like, well, yes, they attacked an airport, but worse, they would be. So it's like it's. I don't know what I don't know how they're gonna get around that. I don't know what they're planning. But the point is, what?
Just do it.
So, I don't know. I'm not saying. I didn't say anything. I'm just explaining the problem. I'm not expressing an opinion, at least not on camera, and not without some alcohol, so that I can blame the alcohol for anything I said that may not be palatable to others. But for now, Lemichmash Yavkid Karabi decided to store some of his equipment in this third city called Michmash. Sahari Kolech Bat Galim. Bat Galim is scream out Bat Galim, because this huge army is attacking it. That's a fourth city. Hakshivi Laisha. Laisha was really decimated there. I told you they have the wall murals in the London Museum showing the way the people of Laish were tortured. It was horrible. Again, similar to October 7th. Horrible, horrible wall murals. Aniyah Anatot, scream out Anatot, that's the seventh city. Od Hayom Benov La'amod, and finally you will reach the city of Nov on that same day. And I obviously miscounted because there's supposed to be at least 10 cities here, and for some reason, because the Gemara didn't bring, I see what happened. I'm going to read it again. Ba'al Ayat, Aval Bemigron, Lemichmash Yafkid Kelav, Abru Me'ivra, Geva Malon Lan. Okay, I skipped a line. I was counting with my hands. Harava Harama, Givat Shaul Nasa, Sa'ali Kolech Bakalim, Hakshiva Laisha, Aniyah Anatot, Nadeda Madmena, that's number 11. You notice we said 10, and we're already up to 11. Yosheveh HaGevim He'izu, that's 12. So, that's unusual. We'll see in a minute why it was 12 and not 10. Ravuna said it was 10 Masa'ot, and here we say it was more. Od Hayom Benov La'amod, and he will reach the city of Nov. And I'm going to tell you what happened in Nov in a moment. And when he gets to the city of Nov, he's going to stand up, and from there he's going to see Jerusalem, and he will make a motion with his hand, Fef Yado, Har Batzion Givat Yerushalayim. He's going to make a disrespectful motion about Jerusalem. We'll see what this disrespectful motion was in a moment, but I need to explain to you why Nov is important. What is the significance of the fact that it's from the city of Nov that he sees Jerusalem, and that he makes a disrespectful gesture towards the city of Jerusalem while he's on Nov, because Nov was, well, does anybody know what Nov was? Let's ask. What happened in Nov?
Where is Nov?
Nov is a city not far from Jerusalem, and it was a city of Kohanim in the days of Shaul HaMelech. And that's where, you remember when David HaMelech was very hungry, he was running away from Shaul because Shaul wanted to kill him, and he had no food, and he got to Nov Ir HaKohanim. And when he got to Nov Ir HaKohanim, he said, I really need to eat something. He said, we don't have anything. We only have the Lechem HaPanim, which only Kohanim can eat it. And he says, give it to me anyway, I'm going to die. So they gave it to him, and then present there was Doeg Edomi. He was there. He was a minister, one of the main ministers of Shaul, and he went and he tattletaled, and he told the king Shaul, by the way, Nov, the city of Kohanim, they were allies of King David. Now Shaul at the time was a little crazy, meaning he had this obsession with King David, and when he found out that Nov Ir Kohanim, they helped David HaMelech, and they didn't know, they did not know that David HaMelech had any issue with Shaul. They didn't know that Shaul wanted to kill him. David was the general in Shaul's army. What do they know? They don't know anything, right? So Shaul comes with his army and he tells the people, did you know that David is my enemy? And they say, what do you mean he's your enemy? He's your son-in-law. He's married to your daughter. He's your main general. He says, no, he's my enemy, and you help my enemy. Bottom line is, he massacred the entire city of Kohanim. It was one of the worst crimes in Jewish history, was the massacre of the Kohanim in the city of Nov. Now the thing is, that Averah, the payday for that Averah still wasn't complete. So when Sanheriv gets to Nov, it gives him the strength, meaning he's standing in Nov and he's looking derisively at Jerusalem, knowing that the Averah of Nov will inure to his benefit, because he's reminding God, you remember what these people did? How they killed all the Kohanim? So that's why he's standing on Nov and he's waving his arm derisively at Jerusalem, guys, it's over. We all know what you did here, and now is the payday, and God sent me to punish you for what happened. By the way, in my humble opinion, and I say this with absolutely zero, God forbid, glee or sense of, right or wrong, because of course, what happened on October 7th was beyond horrific and beyond, the mind can't comprehend what took place. But it's hard not to connect what happened there. 2005, the Jews were there, and we kicked them out of their houses. I lived in Israel, and it was just so depressing. It was horrible. There was families that literally kicked out of there for no crime. It's not like the Jews there were engaged in some, they were attacking ours. It was actually the Arabs that were attacking them, and then they took these Jews out of their houses, Hazat. And for years, they were living in caravans. Imagine you have a beautiful house with your neighbors and your friends, and suddenly they put you in some caravan in some place in the desert. It was indescribably painful what happened to those people. So, sometimes, unfortunately, as a nation, we have to mature, and things happen, we make mistakes, but there's always going to be a payday for the mistakes. So I would be reluctant to make the connection, but it's also difficult not to make the connection between what we as a nation did on 2005 Tisha B'Av. It was the 9th of Av that they were kicked out, and what happened to us on October 7th. So there's that. So that's kind of what's happening here, where he's saying, Nov Ir Kohanim, you people, you did this, and now you're going to have to pay for what you did. He was right in a sense, meaning his thinking was correct, right? His thinking was, pay for what you did. But we'll see what happened actually, because it ended up that no, God already forgave them. All right, so we will continue in August.